and thank you for tuning in. 25 minutes before 11 o'clock. I had to look at the clock twice. I'm not used to the time change yet.
Yeah.
Have you ever known, and I know you don't, this is really not for you, Robin, but we all know somebody, a couple that we're friends with, and they get divorced, and you stay friends with both of them. But when he tells you the story, it's different than when she tells you the story. Mm-hmm. And neither one of them is lying. You know why? Because there's more than one side to a story. Everybody knows that, right? But we, even though we know that when it comes to things like divorce or like children arguing, anything like that, you know, we don't seem to realize it a lot of times in our own worlds or in like political things. We seem to forget that maybe there is more than one side to a story. Our next guest has told us that in a very profound way in a book he has titled Truth: How the Many Sides to Every Story Shape Our Reality. Hector Macdonald is an expert in business storytelling. He's a leading strategic communications consultant. And again, the book is titled Truth. Hector Macdonald, good morning, sir. Thank you for being on our show.
Good morning. Thanks for having me. And can I say that introduction to the book, I think you've captured the essence of it really well there. I might steal your introduction there about arguing couples.
Well, absolutely. Yeah. Well, go ahead and take it. I think it's probably the easiest one to use as a way to understand it because, I mean, unless you're 12, you've known somebody who, and you've sort of figured this out. Instead of taking sides, you sort of figured it out that there were two sides to that story, right?
Well, that's right, and I think you hit the nail on the head when you said, but of course then when we look at political stories, when we look at controversies like gun control or Me Too or whatever it may be, we don't tend to apply that lens. We don't look for the other side of the story. We assume that what we're hearing on our side of the aisle is the only story.
Yeah, I know. All of a sudden I feel like my sex drive is a sin.
I'm not going there.
All right, so tell me, what was it that made you feel like you wanted to express this so profoundly? I mean, you've done such a good job of this. I hope everybody reads the book because this is going to, you know, you're in England, right? Right now, you're in
London.
Oh, in London. Okay. Well, that is England.
That is England.
All right. So, but here in America, it may be
You're
over there.
Speaking the truth, yes.
Yeah. But I mean, in our Congress, we have this exact problem. Nobody's seeing both sides, and yet they're both telling the truth.
That's absolutely right. And when you look at issues like, for example, climate change in the States, which is obviously a very partisan issue these days, you know, there are true statements being made on both sides of the argument, but both sides are determined not to acknowledge or listen to even the facts being presented by the other side. It's a very depressing situation.
Right, and then the divorced couple, they were not listening to each other either, and maybe that's why it led to the divorce. Well, we don't want a divorce in this country. We don't want to fall apart. So does the book help us understand how to listen so that we do hear? Because you know how I look at this? I look at it because we do a radio show, and we have listeners, and they're very smart. You know, smart people listen to talk radio. I don't know if you know this. And they will call in, and they will educate me, even though I disagree at first. And then I said, well, you know, this is a smart person. How am I missing this? And if I listen, I hear it, and I amend my thinking a little bit.
Well, I think that's absolutely right. And I begin the book by talking about complexity, which I think lies at the root of a lot of this. And I take an example that's not yet controversial, but maybe, which is driverless cars. Now, you can be sure that in the next few years, we're going to see legislation proposed that allows private citizens to own and operate driverless cars on our streets. Mm-hmm. Now, at the moment, you know, most people are pretty relaxed about that. They'll hear out the arguments. But will that be true in 5 years' time, or will we be, you know, split like we are over guns and climate? So in the book, I've set out what, you know, some of the different truths are around driverless cars, that if you're for them, you might argue that they're environmentally more friendly, they cause far fewer accidents. But if you're against them, you might focus on different truths, which are, for example, that they're potentially vulnerable to cyber attack, and of course they're going to put millions of people out of work in the taxi and trucking industries. So, you know, you can come at any issue from many different sides and argue your case depending on what your agenda is, using different forms of the truth.
And and you demonstrate that so well in your book with the effectiveness of persuasion. You so eloquently say that.
Well, thank you very much. I mean, I've learned from the greats. You know, to research this book, I studied what the likes of Tony Blair and Margaret Thatcher and George W. Bush used in their speeches to persuade people of what they wanted to do. And sometimes it was deeply misleading, even though they were technically telling the truth. And so an obvious example of that is the George W. Bush 2002 speech, where he repeatedly linked Iraq and Al-Qaeda in the same sentences, without quite ever saying that they were working together to attack America. But of course, straight after 9/11, that was very much the message that came across to the whole nation as a result of that speech.
Yeah, and in that case, I know that in hindsight, everybody thinks it was all one-sided, but Congress was kind of on the same side with him. Whether that, I don't know. It was a really weird period of our history, wasn't it? So how do we use this in our businesses? How do we make our businesses better by understanding this?
You know, that's a really important thing I wanted to get across in this book, which is that there's a very positive side to using different forms of the truth. And I do it every day in my consulting work, where I'm employed by major corporations, very complex organizations with thousands of employees and a huge amount of data and strategies and so on. And I have to distill all of that down to a set of basic messages that we can share with, thousands of employees to encourage them, to motivate them, to explain changes of strategic direction, whatever it may be. And you have to pick between a variety of different truths. And the ones you pick, if you pick the right ones, they might be incredibly powerful ways of getting people to go along with the company's strategy and help it develop and grow. But if you pick the wrong messages, as is true in our family lives as well, if you pick the wrong truths, then you won't be able to persuade your kids to eat those greens. You won't be able to encourage your partner to lay off the cupcakes or to stop smoking. And so we all need to become, better at communicating with different forms of the truth.
Okay, so first they ever did that. Yeah, I heard the 1 minute to wrap message there. Thank you, Hector. I think I got what you were trying to say there, and the book will help me understand it better. The book is called Truth, Hector Macdonald. I found it on Amazon, and I have a copy here if you want the copy that was sent to me. Hector, before you say goodbye, real quickly, do you have a website?
I do. It's hectormacdonald.com, and the book should be in any good bookshop.
Very good. Thank you, Hector. Good luck with the book. We'll be right back.
In this moment, who has your back? Do you know the name of your insurance agent? Does your agent know your name? Or would you call a 1-800 number that connects you to who? Another state? Another country? Get a local independent insurance agent with Auto Owners Insurance. Someone you can call when bad stuff happens. In this moment, get an agent who will protect you in that moment. Visit George Mangan Insurance in Ocala today at manganinsurance.com.
The NFL alumni is sponsored